Welcome to Motive Horror. Today's episode focuses on the bizarre and chilling case of Tarrare, an 18th century French polyphage whose insatiable hunger caused him to do some truly horrid things. Despite his endless hunger, Tarrare was, by all accounts, a slim man of average build and height. He is probably the most well-known and fascinating sufferer of polyphagia, also known as hyperphagia, which is a condition characterized by having extreme or excessive hunger. Certain aspects of Tarrare's existence make him seem almost inhuman. His unique physiology made his eating habits even more daring than the polyphagia alone. For instance, his mouth was noted as being disproportionately wide, and it was said that he could open his mouth an astonishing 4 inches. It may not sound like much, but to put things into perspective, the average person's mouth can only open up to between 1.4 and 2.2 inches, which is about the width of 3 fingers. In Tarrare's case, this would have been about the width of an entire hand from the outside of the thumb to the outside edge of the other side of the hand. He had thin, almost non-existent lips, heavily stained teeth, cheeks that hung loosely when stretched out. When he had not eaten, the skin around his abdomen sagged to such an extent that he could wrap the loose skin around his waist like a belt. When he was full, his abdomen distended like an inflated balloon. His hunger was so great that his parents kicked him out of their home because they could not support his eating habits. At 17 years old, he could eat his own body weight in just the span of 24 hours. And he was even known to be able to eat a quarter of a young bull, which weighed as much as he did, by himself. He spent years after leaving his parents' home, traveling with people of ill repute, such as thieves and prostitutes, begging and stealing food. Eventually, he was hired to open for a traveling charlatan demonstrating his awful hunger. With his unnaturally massive jaws, Tarrare could swallow an entire basket of apples. He ate stone, cork, and even live animals. Tarrare could eat animals whole. He would even eat lizards, rats, cats, and particularly enjoyed eating snakes, as he enjoyed the effects that it had on others. Even with such ravenous eating habits, he was never satisfied. Tarrare would go on to join the French Revolutionary Army during the War of the First Coalition. Even though he was granted food rations sufficient for 4 men, it was not enough to satiate his immense hunger. He would trade favors with other soldiers in return for some of their rations. He would even scavenge for food in the gutters and in refuse heaps, eating all that he could from the waste. Despite his constant eating, he was thin and always appeared to be exhausted and hungry. He was admitted to the hospital while in the army for extreme exhaustion, where he continued his habits of eating refuse and scraps from other patients' food. He would also sneak into the apothecary and eat poultice, which is a soft, moist material used for treating wounds. His hunger stumped military doctors, and he was ordered to stay in the hospital to undergo experimentation on his appetite. Even though he relentlessly ate a diet consisting of anything he could get his hands on, from live animals to trash, he was a normal weight, perhaps even underweight. As part of these experiments, The doctors tested him by presenting him with enough food to feed 15 people and did not restrict him. He ate 2 large meat pies, plates of grease and salt, and an entire 4 gallons of milk. Doctors noted that Tarrare's belly became taut and distended after completing this gluttonous display. It also became known that shortly after his binge eating was complete, he would use the bathroom to relieve himself, leaving behind waste that surgeons described as fetid beyond all conception. In fact, his smell in general was described as being awful. It was said that he often stank to such a degree that he could not be endured within a distance of 20 paces. His body was hot to the touch, and he regularly dripped in smelly sweat. During these experiments he underwent at the hospital, the doctors witnessed Tarrare eat a cat by disemboweling it, drinking its blood, and then devouring the entire animal, leaving nothing but its skeleton. They also witnessed him eat snakes, lizards, puppies, and an entire eel that he ate without chewing after crushing its head in his jaws. Doctors would eventually attempt to cure his appetite using several methods which ultimately failed, including specific diets, laudanum, wine vinegar, and tobacco pills. His appetite could not be stifled. Attempts to do so led to him sneaking from the hospital and scavenging for scraps outside of butcher shops. He would even fight stray dogs for scraps and dead animals. He would drink the blood of patients who were undergoing bloodletting and would attempt to eat bodies of the dead in the morgue. The last straw occurred when an 18-month-old toddler went missing from the hospital. It was immediately suspected that Tarrare ate the child. After this, he was banished from the hospital. 4 years after leaving from the hospital, Tarrare had become extremely ill. He believed the cause of his illness was a golden fork he swallowed years prior becoming lodged inside of him. The reality was, he developed advanced tuberculosis and was on his deathbed. After his death, an autopsy was performed. While there was no golden fork to be found, doctors did find that his throat was broad enough that they could see down into his stomach. His liver and gallbladder were enlarged. His enormous stomach took up nearly his entire abdominal cavity and was covered with ulcers, and his body was filled with pus. It is estimated that Tarrare was 26 years old when he died. While his life was short, he will certainly live on in the imagination of many as a morbidly fascinating medical anomaly. The outdated treatments of his day failed to relieve him of his nightmarish affliction. Perhaps more terrifying, however, is wondering if today's medical treatments might also be ineffective on someone like Tarrare. I hope you enjoyed this brief documentary on Tarrare. If so, please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Until next time.